Hi guys, welcome back to the Nik Collection series. Today we're going to talk about Color Efex. Now Color Efex was the second set of filters that I got into when I first came across the Nik Collection. First one was Silver Efex, and I was very happy with Silver Efex for a long time, but then curiosity got the better of me and I started experimenting with the other stuff. So what Color Efex does that is so good is this. It presents as a set of filters, so a set of presets. You can apply them to your entire picture, and you've got some controls on the right hand side of the screen that you can use to modify the effect of that filter. But it's much better than that, because what I'm going to show you in the video is, first of all, the way that you can apply this as a complete filter. So fantastic for social media and whatnot, to just apply this little bit of pop. But more than that, what we're going to look at is the way that you can use control points to narrow the focus of a filter down to the area that is covered by a particular control point. And this opens up endless possibilities, because you can combine different filters in the same photograph. You can, you might want high definition, high contrast at the front of the picture, slightly less at the back. You might want to cast a bit of a glow around some swiftly moving water. Endless possibilities. Finally, I'm going to show you a way that you can use Photoshop to create layers to include Color Efex filters in one layer and Viveza filters affecting the tone and the color in a second layer. And this combination has an almost infinite number of possibilities. It's very, very cool. Okay, let's get into it. The general idea of this is there's three more or less identical shapes going on in this picture. So there's the stone here in the foreground, this crop of trees here, and of course the mountain there. So I need to bring this level of detail up. So I want to increase the exposure in the middle here, so we've got plenty to work on, and we can adjust this later. Initially I want to show you this in two different ways. We're going to go straight into Color Efex Pro. So we'll come in here, Color Efex, keep the Lightroom adjustments, and see what we can make of this in Color Efex. So I'm going to drop down to Pro Contrast, which is always my starting position. And the strong contrast is pretty good here. Now this really varies depending on the values in your picture, but because this was so flat to begin with, this actually brings it out quite well. So I would apply this straight off. There's quite a lot that I could do in Lightroom. So let's take this global contrast slightly up. I'll take my highlights down a little bit there. Increase the vibrance to get a bit of the life in the foreground. And here I want to bring up the oranges. So really wake up this foreground. We don't want to do that. Bit of yellow to bring the greens out. Bit of saturation. There we go. So we've got this is pretty much as I remember it. There's a trick we can do with calibrations. If we increase the blue saturation, you'll see how, yes, it is affecting the sky, but it's affecting the foreground as well. And if we bring the reds up a little bit, we'll take that out, increase it, you can see, quite subtle, but it's nonetheless breathing a bit of life into the picture. With my colour grading, I'm going to take my mid-tones and we'll just boost the oranges here. Again, same with this. So we're beginning to see that in the highlights. Now, what I could do here is go for blue with my highlights, but I need to be really careful that I don't make this mountain blue, which it clearly is there. So what I'm going to do, in fact, is to bring that up to around about there, and that gives me something that is pretty good. So let's now take this back to Color Efex. We'll keep those adjustments. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'll take this back to neutral, the Pro Contrast, but I'm just going to increase this value here, Dynamic Contrast. That brings a lot more out of the foreground, which is what we're interested in primarily. I add a control point, and what that is going to do is to focus all of the adjustments into the control point. Now I can bring back the adjustments a little way from here, so you can see that is beginning to have an effect. But the important thing here is that I've brought this rock up. And of course I can take this back down again by adjusting the diffusion. So I can apply this and I can go straight back into Lightroom, and here it is. Okay, that's my original. That's my enhanced version. Original, enhanced. So we've got much more realistic sky, we've got more contrast going on in here, and we're in a much better place. Now, what I'm going to do, rather than dwell on this one, is to show you how we might approach this in Photoshop, because it's subtly different. What we're going to do now is we're going to take this original picture, we're going to go into Photoshop, and I'm going to demonstrate how we can pile up different components of the Nik collection and see how much more flexibility that gives us. Okay, without further ado, edit in Adobe Photoshop. All right, and we will go for instantly Color Efex Pro. Now, before I forget, I'm going to convert this to a smart object. Okay, so that when we save it into Photoshop, we can come back into that file and we can reopen it again. Okay, so we're going to do more or less the same edit. So we're going to go for strong contrast. We're going to boost the oranges and yellows. With this, I'm going to give it a little bit more contrast. I just want to show you how control points will work. So if I want to bring something up in this picture, I can take a control point, right? So let's put it in there, and I don't know if you noticed particularly, but what this has done is it's put the opacity of the original filter, which was spread across the entire picture, and it's focused it all into this control point. So these are my dynamic controls, if you like, from that filter. All the control point is now going to give me is the ability to play with the luminance, the chrominance, and diffusion within the bounds of that control point. Okay, and I'm going to make another one. And we're going to put it here. I'm just going to lift those a little bit. Okay, so we've got three triangular shapes. We've got this one, and in the background that one. Okay, so that I like. So we're going to apply that, and let's just check back into Photoshop, and we can see that we've got a Pro Contrast layer with Smart Filter here. Okay, and the Smart Filter we've got is the Color Efex Pro filter. What I want to do is to play around with the tonality of this picture. So we're going to do this in Viveza. So we've got a neutral setting. So we'll increase the contrast a little bit, increase the saturation and the warmth. Now we're getting a little bit of a magenta cast up there, so that's not so good. So let's just be a little bit careful with that warmth. We can do this another way. Okay. Giving a little bit of contrast throughout. Now, white balance, I'm not going to play around with that, but what I might do is put a control point here. And let's just play around with that. So we've got selective bits and bobs here. So we can take the we take our blacks down, our shadows. And these are, in fact, the same controls here. So there's selective tones. There's our highlights, mid-tones, shadows. Okay, so they're exactly the same. They're probably a bit easier to manipulate here. Okay, so I think that's looking quite good. We're happy with the sky, happy with that. I think what I would like to do though is I'd like to warm this whole thing up, but not the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in another control point. Put it in here, and let's make this a lot bigger. And we'll take it down here. Okay, now this gives us I think, a way of affecting the warmth of the land without affecting the sky or the mountain. Okay, and this is much more effective. Sure. Okay, so I think this is good. This demonstrates how we can solve some of the issues that we've come up against with this file. Our sky is looking quite natural. We've got the contrast we wanted out of the foreground. I'm going to apply this. And what you're seeing here is we've got a Viveza layer that's been added to the Smart Filter list. And if I wanted to go back into this, I can just double click here. It will invoke Viveza. And I can just continue on editing in exactly the way that I did before. There's my control point. Okay, but we'll cancel out of that, close without saving. And I'm quite happy with that. It's quite realistic. So what I'm going to do, save. And this will go back into Lightroom. And here it is in Lightroom. Perfect. A little bit of overblowing up there, but we can go in and correct that. So the one thing that would be remaining in this picture is to get rid of, use the crop tool to get rid of these bits here, and just a tiny little adjustment to get rid of that up there. Just that. Done. Perfect. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. I hope this has been useful. What we've discovered here is we can go from Lightroom directly into Color Efex or into Viveza, but round tripping would necessitate saving it out of Color Efex, coming back to Lightroom, going back out to Viveza. I'm not sure how much that affects the original file, whereas if we do it the Photoshop way, this repeated writing to the file, if we do it the Photoshop way, we've got a way of round tripping that doesn't write the file until we've finished editing it in Photoshop. Until we hit that save button, it's fine. And we can always go back to Photoshop and redo this process again. So these are the chief things. And of course, everything that I've said about Lightroom is equally true of Photolab, equally true of any other photo editing program. You can export, treat it as a destination. We can move out to the Nik Collection equally easily from Photolab, whatever your editing program wants to be. Okay, so thanks a lot. I hope you've enjoyed it. Give us a like on the channel, or rather, give us a like on the video, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. That would make my life so much better. And we'll see you next week. Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.